Actors take on a wide variety of roles. That's part of the challenge and part of the excitement. Some are close to you, and some are distant. Distant in time, distant in geography, distant in culture. There are many aids to help you discover how other people look and sound, but what about behavior? Do people from other countries have different mannerisms from yours? Of course they do. So we've brought in Norine Dresser, a diversity specialist, to demonstrate some of the distinctions between the way we behave and the habits of people from other countries.
Hi everyone, my name is Norine Dresser. I'm a folklorist, and today we're going to talk about how culture affects movement. Now we're going to talk about greetings, and the most common greeting in the United States is the handshake. Sean? Alexandra, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Now there are exceptions when people do not shake hands with one another. One reason can be if you are an Orthodox Jew or a Muslim, a man would never shake hands with a woman, and the reverse, a woman would never shake hands with a man. We're going to talk about kissing now. Now, if the two of you were sweethearts and walking around in Asia and were kissing out on the street, that would be a big taboo. But I'm talking about the social kiss. And with the influx of people from all over the world into the United States here, we have started to absorb those customs of kissing. So if I saw Alexandra, even though I might not have known her very well or very long, I would go up to her and we wouldn't actually make contact on the cheeks, but we would make the sound. Now, I would not do that with you unless I knew that you were a member of the family and very close. Otherwise, taboo. Right. So you're now my nephew, and Sean, oh, it's wonderful to see you. So that's what we would do with the kissing. I've invited Joel in this scene because the next gesture we're going to do would be absolutely taboo if a man and a woman did it to each other, particularly if they didn't know one another. We're going to practice the abrazo. The abrazo means embrace, and it's very commonplace in Mexico and further south in Latin America. So the two gentlemen will now face each other, grab each other tightly, and embrace warmly. Say, hola. Hola. It might take place if you were related. For example, if Sean were related to Alexandra, but for right now, we're going to pretend that absolutely they are strangers to one another. But even if I don't know Alexandra very well, I've just run into her. She's a neighbor and we meet each other in the grocery store. Alexandra, it's been so long. It's a very nice, warm embrace, and it expresses so much of the Latino culture. We're going to talk about bowing now. Bowing is a more problematic gesture for Americans to make, but with so many people from all over Asia, we need to become more comfortable doing it or knowing how to respond, what's expected of us. Bowing is really an act of respect, but also an act of submission. So there are different forms of bowing. The most common one that we'll see will be like this. You want to try it? Okay. Now the Japanese style of bowing is a little bit different, and I want to show it to you. You hold your arms more at the side and you let the arms slip down like this and then come up. And the rule for Japanese bowing, usually the one who bows the lowest is the subservient person. So if you were like visiting dignitary from Los Angeles and you were in Japan, why not, right? The person would be bowing to you very deeply because you are in a superior position. And there's a famous department store in Japan And when they're training their personnel to wait on customers and to interact with them, they use what's called a bow meter, and it's actually marked, so how low you bow for this person and how low you bow for that person. But you need to know about it, because if somebody comes up and bows to you, you don't know what to do. And as I say, if you're unsure of yourself, you can always nod your head, which acknowledges their act of respect. I'm going to talk about a gesture that's very common in India and also in Thailand, although they call it by different names. I think you'll find it useful if you're ever portraying a scene in India or in Thailand, or even in an Indian or a Thai restaurant. More commonly, it's known as the namaste, and it's hands up like this, closer here, higher up a little bit, yeah. And then you just bend. It's a form of respect, okay? And if someone does it to you, then you return it. And even though it feels strange, weird, uncomfortable, you are returning the respect that has been given to you. You bring it close to you. Some people put it at chin height, and then you bend over like that. And sometimes you could even make it a little bit higher. If there are other people who are making that gesture to you, then you follow their lead. It's safer to do it chin height. Right now I'm going to show you how to do the salam. The salam is an Arabic expression of salam alaikum, may peace be with you, but then there are accompanying hand gestures. First you put your right hand over the heart, then over your mouth, middle of forehead, and then hand out.
And you said you say salam alaikum as you do that, or before or after?
You would say it as you're doing it. Salam alaikum. And it's done quickly. Let's speed up the tempo, okay? Salam alaikum. It's almost one sweeping gesture. Yeah, you're not really gonna stop. You're not gonna stop. No. You're gonna do. Let's do it smoothly, okay? Salam alaikum. Yeah. And don't you feel the robes?
You totally do. I was just thinking that. I felt like, oh, that sounded right. Yeah,
and I did the movements right.
Yeah.
And so you turn I noticed that you bowed your head a little bit. Is that turn the way you touch your forehead,
Again,
bow your head, and
yes.
lift it up? Okay.
I think this is also a sign of respect again, too.
Of course.
Right, okay.
I've asked Joel to join us again because we're going to practice doing something that's very commonplace outside of the United States, especially in Asia and the Middle East, and almost everywhere, and that's same-sex hand-holding. In other places in the world, it would be perfectly fine for you to hold hands with Joel, but it would be absolutely taboo for you to be seen out in public with a female, even if she was married to you. You wouldn't, there's no body contact, especially in Japan. You would never see a man and a woman touching one another, even if they're married to each other. But what's really commonplace in the Philippines, other parts of Asia, would be men and holding hands with men. And there's no homosexual kind of connotation to it. Eastern Europe as well. I was in an airport in Romania and saw two men walking and holding hands, and then they sat down at a table like this, and they were drinking their coffee all the time holding hands. And it's strictly camaraderie. And what's very difficult is when people from those cultures come here and they want to hold hands, then they're accused of homosexuality, and that really throws them. So they're not, they're not comfortable. They have to relearn those rules of touching and not touching. So again, if you're portraying somebody outside of the United States and you're with another man, you could have your arms around each other. Try it.
That feels more comfortable than holding hands.
Than holding hands. But they will hold hands. Arms linked will also work, okay? But not heterosexual touching.
And is that like age too? Like, is it older men that do that normally, or is it
Oh, yes.
not like younger men though?
Younger men
Younger
as
men
well.
too, okay.
Mhm.
So a whole age range, I guess.
The whole age range, exactly. Sometimes the things that we do just automatically are offensive to other people. I'm going to talk about a few hand gestures that are really interpreted differently in other countries. What does this mean to us?
Good
Awesome.
job.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs
good
up.
job.
Positive.
Okay, now when Clinton was nominated X many years ago, first time for president, the camera caught him going like this, and it was a good shot for the camera. But for people in the Middle East, it meant up yours. So that's not very good for
Wow.
his future negotiating with Middle Eastern countries. And what does this mean?
Okay. Right. Yeah.
A-okay, but not in Brazil and places like that, because this is the orifice and we know what goes through it. So it's a very obscene gesture, as is this. Okay, in Japan, that's a terrible gesture. We have to be very careful with our hands because we can totally mess up a communication. And so when you're on camera, you want to be careful that you just don't do something automatically that means one thing to you and the audience may get a different meaning of it. So you have to be really careful when you're on stage and you think you're doing right, you better research it. And there are plenty of places to find out about these things. Now, what does this mean?
Peace.
V for victory.
V for victory. But not in England. This again means up yours. So you want to be really careful. You don't want to do this to a brutish kind of person because you're going to have to bear the consequences of that act. So the point is, be very cautious when you're making gestures that are just so natural and you just assume that everybody interprets them the same way. You could be totally off. Smiling is very significant, and in American culture we're used to just smiling all the time. But it can also be interpreted as being something flirtatious, and in fact it really is. Oh, you just did a good job of that.
Lots of practice.
But it's definitely not universal. It's not universal in the way in which it's interpreted, and it's interpreted the most unlike Americans smiling in Japan and in Korea. For example, in Japan, they don't smile too much, and so in the old days when they would take pictures of our diplomats with Japanese diplomats, it would always look like the Japanese diplomats were unhappy with the results of this meeting. The truth of the matter was, it was a serious event, and therefore they had to look serious. Once they caught on to how that picture was misinterpreted, then they had people come in and remind them, smile, look like the meeting was successful. Koreans think that if you smile too much, you're being frivolous, and it's not important. So the man who smiles too much is frowned upon. What do you think is the most ideal eye contact?
I tend to look people in the eye for a little while and then periodically look away for a minute just so they don't feel like I'm being too intense and I'm staring. I find that's a little unnerving for some people.
And how about you, Sean?
Yeah, I would agree. I think an initial contact directly and then kind of off and on so as not to be aggressive or to come across stalker-like, especially with women.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable.
Well, that's the American style, because when you look someone directly in the eye, it's interpreted as honesty and forthrightness and truthfulness.
Right.
But for other cultures, it has a different kind of meaning. And so if you're ever playing a part where you're portraying someone, say, from Asia or from Latin America, especially from Mexico, you would cast your eyes downward. Not your head, just, you can talk to me. Talk to me.
Okay, so I'm talking to you and I'm not.
No, talk to me.
Oh, okay.
And then
Right,
I
okay.
would, instead of looking you in the eye, I would just sort of cast my eye downward. Not necessarily the head, but just not look you directly in the eye.
I understand.
I live in a neighborhood where you live as well, and we have a big Latino population. And I could walk down the street, or drive by more likely, and can tell the difference between people from Cuba and people from Mexico. Cubans will look you straight in the eye, and Mexican people will tend to deflect their vision because they respect you, and therefore it changes their body language. The Cuban style is more like this, and the Mexican style is more like this because they're looking down as a sign of respect. But you can just imagine how easy that can be misinterpreted. So if you're portraying people from either of those cultures, remember about the eye contact. You don't want to stare at them. You want to, just cast your eyes downward as a sign of respect. In the United States, we take it for granted quite often that everybody eats the same, but there are subtle differences, depending on utensils especially, and in the different ways in which we eat. Now, as an actor, you both have to be prepared to eat consistently with the context in which you're appearing. For now, we're going to pretend that we are eating in Britain. The scene is Britain, and we're going to proceed to eat. And there are different styles of eating depending on class, because England is a very class-conscious society. So first I'm going to serve Alex.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to serve Sean. And then I'm going to serve myself. I won't indulge in English accents because I don't know how to do them. But anyway, we're going to start with the middle class eating. And this is what we do. We put the fork in the left hand and we put the knife in the right hand. And we never change them back and forth as we do in the United States, which really seems like a waste of time. We could be eating so much more if we didn't have to change.
Quite inefficient.
Quite.
Exceedingly so.
Anyway, so what we do is we cut off a piece, fork in left hand, regardless of whether or not you're left-handed or right-handed. And we can continue to hold the knife in our right hands, and then we eat it.
Scrumptious.
Delicious.
Okay. That's middle class. Got it?
Got it.
I shouldn't be talking when I'm eating, but it's hard to do everything at once. Heavens no, right. Now, if we're lower class, we change the way in which we hold our utensils. We hold them up, fists on table. And you'll notice that it gives you a different feeling, a different perspective. Do you feel very powerful? Do you feel very lower class?
I feel like myself.
Oh, good.
I don't want to fight with my food.
Okay, so now we're going to do it again.
You still cut the same way.
You still cut the same way. Put the food in your mouth, and but you're right. What do you think?
Juicy.
Okay. No, you have to hold it up higher.
Oh, you're right.
You too.
Oh.
Time's up.
Stab someone here.
All right. Now we're going to try upper class. Upper class is this way. You watch me first, and then you do it. I'm going to slice it off.
Really enjoying
You
it.
chew, savoring every little morsel. So you cut it off, and then you put your utensils down while you're chewing. Now,
Delightful.
do you feel the difference in yourself? And how would you describe those differences?
Very relaxed.
How about you, Sean?
Quite like James Bond.
I get, is he upper class?
He
Pretends to.
pretends.
Oh,
Yes.
very good, very good. All right, so now we've practiced eating British style. In California, we're very lucky because we have a very large Asian population. So many of us are very adept at using Asian utensils, which come down to being the chopsticks. Now, I want to show you something about chopsticks. If there is no chopstick rest on the table, you make a chopstick rest because it's very bad form to place the chopsticks directly onto the tablecloth. So this is what you do. Pull your chopsticks out, fold the paper in thirds, twist it, and then put it down, and then you have your own chopstick rest. Okay? Isn't that-
I
see?
love that.
Okay, another thing you have to do is to separate them. The reason they're joined at the end is because it indicates to you that no one has ever used these before. Okay?
Fresh out the box.
Yes. Now, I got into the bad habit of going like this to make sure there were no splinters. However, it's very improper. However, there are nicer forms of chopsticks, so it's, you know, you have to make a decision about whether you want splinters in your tongue or you want to be very polite. Okay. One of the things, again, that you're not supposed to do is, this is a rice paddle. You never put your chopsticks in the rice like that. Do you know why?
Because that means it's your bowl now, right?
No, that was a good guess, but that's not why. This is something they do at funerals. And so it's really bad form, and you just never put your chopsticks there. You always will rest them on the chopstick rest if you have it, or on your bowl like this, okay? All right, I'm going to serve you some rice, and serve you some rice. And myself, and lucky this is called sticky rice because it's easier to handle. Now, have you ever used chopsticks before?
I always feel like I don't do it right. So I would love for you to teach me the right way to do it.
Okay, well, the bottom one is always stationary, and it's on top of these two fingers here.
Okay. Oh, those two things.
Yeah.
Ah.
The upper one, and they always have to be the same length. You put your fingers back here and you use the upper one like you would hold a pencil or a pen. Now I'm going to demonstrate this to you, and you'll see that I won't be successful. But one of the things that Asian people do when they're eating rice is they bring the bowl up to them. So if you drop something, try and pick something up, and it's because it's sticky rice, it makes it a lot easier, right? So that's really how it's done. And in fact, if you go into a Chinese restaurant, you'll see them moving very quickly.
Right.
If you're eating Japanese food, you can take the food with your chopsticks, place it on top of the rice, bring it close to you, and you'll be more adept that way, more successful, I should say. Are you doing all right with it?
I'm doing all right, actually.
Yeah,
I think
the bottom one stationary, the top one is really the movable one, and you need to be towards the upper end of it. You have better control.
Okay.
Okay, let me see.
I think I'm
Yeah, I think you're doing okay.
not bad here.
And you're doing okay?
Oh yeah.
All
There's a
right.
pro over there.
So we use chopsticks with Chinese food. We use chopsticks with Korean food and Chinese food. Do you use chopsticks with Thai food?
I've never been given
Trick question.
chopsticks in
Trick
a Thai
question.
restaurant.
Pardon?
I've never been given chopsticks in a Thai
No,
restaurant.
except that sometimes, and you can giggle like I do, someone will come into a Thai restaurant and say, "May I have chopsticks, please?" They don't use chopsticks, so they look pretty silly eating chopsticks in a culture that doesn't use chopsticks. They use forks and spoons. Cambodia uses spoons. And do you know why you don't see knives on a table in Japanese restaurants or in Chinese restaurants?
Because they could be weapons?
Yeah.
Yes, the knife is still a weapon.
Wow.
Oh,
So-
I thought you were just being funny.
No,
I
he
was
was being astute. Yes. So this is your chopstick lesson. Do you think you've got the hang of it now?
I think I need to practice, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you'll be better at it than other times. What's hard?
Very sticky rice because it's sticky.
And what's difficult to do, but it's certainly worth trying, is the noodles. Like they have the pho, P-H-O, the noodle places, and that's Vietnamese. And then you have to twist the noodles and get them into your mouth this way.
Kind of like twirling your fork.
Slurping is okay.
Slurping's okay.
It's okay,
I'm in.
definitely okay.
I'm
Right.
so bad at noodles with chopsticks. It's
Yeah,
just,
I am
I'm just
too.
like, where's my fork?
Now we're going to try eating in a style that may be a little more challenging for you. This is a style that's used in India and Pakistan, in the Middle East. The food we have today happens to be from India, and it happens to be all vegetarian. And what we do is, and the most important thing about eating this style, whether it's the Middle East or Asia, is we never reach for the food with our left hand. That is really taboo because left hand is used for hygienic purposes, okay? But you need to use your, both hands when you tear the bread. This bread is called chapati. And so, theoretically, we've all washed our hands before we've begun eating because we're going to be sharing this plate. So it's very similar to the way in which people in Mexico use their tortilla. So you use this as a scoop, and you just use your fingers, no left hand, and just use your right hand, and you reach for the food. It's very communal. Okay, go for it. Oh yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, spicy.
Yeah.
I
Uh-oh.
didn't see that coming.
No, aren't we technically double dipping here?
Is that all right?
And that's okay?
It's culturally acceptable to double dip. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yes,
This is good over college prep parties.
usually they serve a big round platter like in Middle Eastern cultures, and yes, you keep double dipping, triple dipping, quadruple dipping. It makes a bond between us because we are eating communally. We are truly sharing food. And so, yes, and so we're being tied together more tightly through this food experience. There are lots of little subtle things in the ways in which people eat. For example, Japanese don't like to show their mouths. And when they use a toothpick, if you notice, if you go to a Japanese restaurant, there'll usually be a toothpick, which indicates that they expect you to use it. But you would always cover your mouth so nobody sees you. It's partly one of the reasons why smiling isn't so preferred in Japan, because when you smile, you show your teeth and you're not supposed to. And the old stereotypes of the Japanese women in their kimonos and, tee-hee-hee, but it's really all about showing your teeth.
Excuse me.
Well.
Well, you know something, Alex, that if we were in a Middle Eastern country or in the Philippines and you burped or belched, whichever you prefer in terms of terminology, would be considered a compliment to the host.
I'm moving.
Yes, and we don't really consider it a compliment here. I mean, if a child burps, the mother or father will scold them, at least say, "Excuse me," but in certain countries, you don't have to worry about that. As far as other noises at the table, depending on where you are, in Japan, it's perfectly fine to slurp your noodles, and it's really feels great to be able to do that and not be able to worry that you're being offensive. And in Hong Kong and places in China, I can't do it, but if you smack, not the right way, smack your lips, it means compliments to the chef. Yes, so slurping and lip smacking are perfectly fine, as are belching or burping, whatever you want to call it.
That should give you an idea of what to look for when you take on characters from different cultures. As you see, our behavior is conditioned by who we are and where we come from. Be specific, do your research, and enjoy the journey.